Let's get into back compat now that we've loosened up a little bit. Nick B. Leave It is our first write-in. I asked you all, like I said, what are some titles you want to see in backwards compatibility? How do you feel about the program? Do you have questions about the program? And so Nick says, simple. Every older title from first party, from Ninja Theory to Obsidian, Double Fine, etc. Obviously, they'd be shit out of luck for games like Heavenly Sword or Hellblade VR, but otherwise, you could just point to Xbox Series being a way to play a first party's entire resume. And I thought this was a good starter because that would make the most sense, right? And that's kind of the issue with backwards compatibility on Xbox is oftentimes you'll find yourself thinking, this thing makes sense. Why is this game not here? And in this case, first party, I think their whole catalog should be represented on Xbox. They now own them. This should be a priority above all the other games because I know there's cult classics that people want and they're like, how is this not on backwards compatibility? Or this would be amazing if they did that. Same thing with games that have an audience, which we'll go through in this entire list. Like I said, cult hits, popular titles that are just missing. And oftentimes it does boil down to licensing, but we'll dive into that more. But I think that there has to be some type of navigation of that for your first party and figuring out, hey, we own these teams and we want their legacies on our systems, and to play best on our systems. I think there's something very important about all of that. And I think the reality of it is two things. It's emulation and it's licensing. So number one is, for those who don't know how backwards compatibility works on Xbox, and I don't know the ins and outs of it, like the true technology, but I know generally how the game would run. So it's through an emulation software. What happens is, if you've noticed, when you put your game disc in, let's say I put Knights of the Old Republic into my Xbox One or into my Series X, it's not just going to start spinning the disc and play the game like it would on its original system or even the Xbox 360. What happens is it downloads the game from their servers, right? And so that's what happens. Like, I think KOTOR is like 4 gigabytes or something. So it downloads that game from their servers, and then you're eventually able to play once the download is complete. Because what happens is the disc serves as a starter and activation to the emulation software, and what's happening is they're just emulating the game on the Xbox. And it's why you actually see people making really cool videos. I think Modern Vintage Gamer made one of what the Xbox Series S emulation is capable of, and they were playing PS2 games, I want to say GameCube games. There were some really cool things that they were playing on the Xbox Series S through its emulation, which I think was through like a dev kit or something along those lines. So for those who don't know, that's generally how it works. And I think that while it's way more complicated, I do think of games I've attempted to emulate that don't work. So if you've messed around with the emulator before, you can alter the speed of games. You can like double speed or slow certain things down. You can calculate the everything about it, really. There's a lot of control with certain softwares, like the PS2X one. I think it's called. Dolphin's a very popular emulator. So you can hop into these, you can load ROMs in. And in particular, my last experience with an emulator was when I was trying to play Fallout Tactics Brotherhood of Steel for a video. For those who don't know, it's a Diablo style or more of a throwback, Champions of Norrath, Champions Return to Arms. It is one of those style games, but it's in the Fallout universe. So if you played it brand new as a Fallout fan, you'd be very disappointed, but in its legacy, it's very interesting. Anyway, I don't believe you can, I'm pretty sure you can't even play this on an Xbox 360 as far as I'm aware. And so your only way of accessing this game would have been the original Xbox. It's not on PC. And so if you had it on the original Xbox, recording that is near impossible. So the only way for me to make this video I wanted to make, which is just returning to it and seeing what it's all about, the only way to do that was actually to fire up the game via an emulator. And so a lot of games you'll be able to just load the ROM in and play it, but certain games you have to tinker with the speed, the playback speed. And I remember it was a science experiment, dude. I had like 5 people in the lab helping me figure out how the hell to get Fallout Tactics Brotherhood of Steel running. So there is probably that kind of thing happening where you don't just emulate the game and it plays. I think there is more beyond it in getting the game running. And then there's licensing issues. There are titles that have up to 18 different licenses involved from, it's not just, and I'm often guilty of simplifying it this way. The major ones are pub and dev, but there are engines, bits of technology used, so on and so forth, from engines to maybe some type of animation technology and so on and so forth, where you have to approve and check all these boxes to get one game to come back and then provide these updates for them. So It does go a bit deeper than that, of course. It's not as simple as loading up a game on Dolphin and tweaking its settings. But what I'm saying is if it's complicated on that front, I imagine multiply that by a lot. And it's why you don't see a lot of these games coming back. Because Xbox themselves, Jason Ronald, has said in the past that a lot of it is, yes, we sadly just have licensing issues where we can't get some of these games, but sometimes it's a matter of actually getting them to work and work properly, because you don't want to just bring a game back and have the back compat be worse, because conceptually that doesn't make sense. 99.9% of us don't know what they're doing and how they're testing it and how they're figuring out how to get these games running. Most of us are just looking at it as, this is my Series X, which is very powerful. Powerful thing must run old game quickly and better. That's it. And so they want to keep that vision. And so if you pop something out that doesn't run, say, at like an uncapped frame rate, it might be a little bit concerning. And if it doesn't look as sharp, might be like, what? This is an old game, though. It should look better. So just stuff worth considering with emulation in general as we go through this list here. But when it comes to every first-party title, I think this is the first thing they should 100% address if possible. If those games are available on other platforms, find a way to get them there. Like Heavenly Sword, getting that on Xbox, that would probably be a release of its own, but still, that'd be sick. I would dig seeing that.